Good morning, all. As we enter into this service, please note that those of you participating via Zoom have been muted by our host, and we ask that in-house participants please remain masked while in the sanctuary. Also, be advised that our services are being recorded and, with the exception of joy and concerns, will be published online. Finally, if you wish, take a moment to arrange your own chalice at home. The opening words are from The Coronavirus is Rewriting Our Imaginations by Kim Stanley Robinson from The New Yorker in May of 2020. There was a change in the way we were looking at things, and it is still ongoing. The virus is rewriting our imaginations. What felt impossible has become thinkable. We're getting a different sense of our place in history. We know we're entering a new world, a new era. We seem to be learning our way into a new structure of feeling. Treva will light the chalice here in the sanctuary. I invite you to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us, if you're able. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourselves muted and our in-house participants to remain masked. However, we want you and whoever's with you to sing with Mary and me as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. So let us all sing the opening hymn, One World, number 133. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community of Cambria. We are glad you've joined us today. We acknowledge that the UUCC sanctuary stands on land that was once inhabited by coastal Chumash and Salinan indigenous peoples, whose ancestors lived primarily in the San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. As a Unitarian Universalist community, We celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation, inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU7 principles. Today's service centers around the sixth principle. We affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. As naive or as impossible as the sixth principle may seem, we should not give up on it. In the face of our culture's apathy and fear, we should imagine and help create a powerful vision of peace by peaceful means, liberty by liberatory means, justice by just means. We should believe and live as if we believe that a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all is possible. There's no guarantee that we will succeed, but we will improve ourselves and improve the world by trying. My name is Jan Kallner, and I'm your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning. If you're not on our mailing list, please visit our website at www.uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all of our members and friends. It's a great way to keep up with the latest news in our community. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of our past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining our community. Please contact Diane DeMarco or a person on the board if you're interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of our community as well as a promise we make and aspire to. Let us now recite our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand. When Randy or I call your name, please stand or unmute yourself and then speak. Mary?
I'll make this real quick because I printed something out and I forgot to bring it. If you would like to be more actively involved in voting rights, politically involved, you can get a lot of information from the sidewithlove.org. And if you would like to have some donate to some charities that you know the money's going to go directly to Haiti and many other places. UUSC just sent out something yesterday. They've teamed up with 4 different charities in Haiti. UUSC.org.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, I have an announcement. This is Randy. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock on Zoom, the worship committee meeting will occur, and those of you on the committee, please be there. If you wish to join the meeting, please contact me, Randy Schwalbe, and I'll send you the link to the meeting.
Did you all hear Randy's announcement? Yes, okay.
Okay, good. All right, Kat, please unmute yourself and share your announcement.
Thank you. On behalf of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee, I invite you to go to the website uuccambria.org and check out the column under Social and Environmental Justice. And there you will see a list of everything we did and spent money on and volunteered for and collected during the year 2021. And so after you look at that, I would love to hear from you, letting me know that you'd like to be on the committee and have something to do with how our funds will be spent this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Oh, by the way, it was Rebecca that made that beautiful list. And you can either call me or Rebecca regarding joining. Thank you.
Don, please unmute yourself and share your announcement.
Thank you. Yes, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, the Cambria Community Services District is is starting its annual review of its 3-year strategic plan. And the Monday morning session, which begins at 9 o'clock on Zoom, we invite members of the community to come and speak to us to let us know how we're doing. And the question which I pose to everyone is, what kind of a community would you like Cambria to develop into, and how can the CCSD help in that effort? So I invite everyone, it's free, and I would anticipate everyone who wants to speak will be given the opportunity to be fully heard. So I do invite everyone who has a free moment tomorrow starting at 9 o'clock. The Zoom link can be found on our district website. If you have any difficulty with that, you could contact me and I can email you the link as well. So thank you for that, and I hope to see some of you there.
Okay, thank you, Don.
We need to become a town that sells shirts like that. That is awesome. Sorry.
Okay, that's all from their Zoom land. Back to you, Jan.
Thank you. Let us take this moment to remember a great human being, Thich Nhat Hanh, the revered Zen Buddhist monk who helped pioneer the concept of mindfulness in the West and that of socially engaged Buddhism in the East. He died yesterday. He was 95. The International Plum Village community of engaged Buddhism said that Nhat Hanh, known as Thay to his followers, died at his temple home in Hue, Vietnam. In the words of that community, we invite our beloved global spiritual family to take a few moments to be still, to come back to our mindful breathing as we together hold Thay in our hearts. If you wish now, let us be still and mindful of our breath. Let us feel our breath entering our body and leaving. Close your eyes. Inhale through the nose. Exhale again. And once more. So be it. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life, but please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. And next week, Steve and Marcia Nathanson will present Transitions, What We Learn from Change. The first reading is The Pandemic is a Portal by Arundhati Roy from the Financial Times, April 3rd, 2020. Who can use the term gone viral now without shuddering a little? Who can look at anything anymore? A door handle, a cardboard carton, a bag of vegetables, without imagining it swarming with those unseeable, undead, unliving blobs dotted with suction pads waiting to fasten themselves onto our lungs? Who can think of kissing a stranger, jumping onto a bus, or sending their child to school without feeling real fear? Who can think of ordinary pleasure and not assess its risk? Who among us is not a quack epidemiologist, virologist, statistician, and prophet? Which scientist or doctor is not secretly praying for a miracle? Which priest is not, secretly at least, submitting to science? What is this thing that has happened to us? It's a virus, yes. In and of itself, it holds no moral brief, but it is definitely more than a virus. Coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists. And in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Let us join in a time of meditation, of prayer, and of silence. Let us seek the quiet and the calm, laying aside our struggles. And in the silence, may there be a reverence in our hearts, a thankfulness within our spirit, and a deepened understanding of the meaning of our lives. Let us enter the stillness.
Yes, here. Is it loud enough? Am I muted?
May we find the compassion and empathy we need to strengthen relationships. May we find ways to love each other well. May we not judge or condemn, but rather build a beloved community. The second reading is excerpted from Elizabeth Lesser's essay in O Magazine in July of 2021. Elizabeth is the co-founder of the famous Omega Institute of Mindfulness in Rhinebeck, New York. As 2020 came to a close, I began to wonder if my dream of the great slowdown was becoming the great meltdown. As a teacher of mindfulness, sometimes I am my own worst enemy, my own worst student and enemy.
I can't hear.
Eventually, my burnout caught up with me and I landed in the emergency room with a gastrointestinal issue. My husband suggested I try some of my own medicine, the stuff I have written several books about. So here's what I did. I turned to the words of some of my greatest teachers. I keep a basket of their quotes on my desk. I decided that whatever quote my hand touched first would serve as my GPS back into what I call the four landscapes of the human journey: mind, body, heart, and soul. The first words gave me goosebumps. Today's mighty oak is yesterday's nut that held its ground. The phrase is attributed to Rosa Parks. I followed Mrs. Parks' guidance and went back to the tools that never fail me: meditation to lift the veil from my clouded mind, exercise to reclaim my body and physical vitality. As I felt my strength returning, I was reminded how despair and negativity can spread like a virus too. Being an agent of uplift feels almost revolutionary, and doing so is an act of sanity and an offering of healing. Historically, pandemics have jump-started innovation, or they have slid humanity backwards into oppression. We get to choose this time. Not a great meltdown or a great slowdown, but maybe a great wake up. One that breaks us open and waters the seeds of our best selves. Each one of us can be that acorn, holding our ground, lifting our sights, and together becoming a forest of mighty oaks. Please join in singing No Other People's Children by Elizabeth Alexander.
I'm introducing this song this morning in the hope that this will become a part of our regular repertoire here at UU at CC. How did we get to this place where we could look at each other's face and see anything but beauty and understanding? I want to know who you are and face the suffering that keeps us far apart. I can never truly see the world through your eyes or take away your pain, but I'm listening and I'm hoping you can hear me saying, you are my neighbor, you are beloved, you are worth seeing for who you are. You are my neighbor, you are beloved, you are worth seeing for who you are. I'm here, I'm listening, I'm here listening with you. Break bread with me, make peace with me, seek the truth with me, begin again with me, relate with me, create with me, be the change with me that keeps our children safe and free. There are no other people's heartaches, there are no other people's injuries, there are no other people's children in this world. See what is unseen, see what is unspoken, believe there is no will between our broken, beating hearts. Please sing with me. You are my neighbor, you are beloved, you are worth seeing for who you are. You are my neighbor, you are beloved, you are worth seeing for who you are. I'm here, I'm listening, I'm here listening with you. Hold hands with me, forgive with me, make mistakes with me, and take a chance with me, be whole with me, be real with me, start to heal with me, so we can live courageously. There are no other people's heartaches, there are no other people's injuries, there are no other people's children in this world.
Thank you, Mary. Today's sermon is titled Going Viral. What lessons has the virus taught us about creating beloved community? To be delivered by Reverend Rod Richards. Rod Richards has served as minister of Unitarian Universalist San Luis Obispo since 2012. Previously, he served the UU congregation in Sierra Vista, Arizona, now called Sky Island UU. He is currently vice president of the UU Ministers Association. Rod is originally from the Midwest. He was born in South Dakota, grew up in Iowa, and entered adulthood in Minnesota. That's the Midwest. He is very pleased to be returning to the pulpit of the UU community of Cambria and is eager always to find ways that our two congregations can effectively collaborate in bringing the good news and good work of Unitarian Universalism to the wider community. Reverend?
Thank you, Jan. It is a great pleasure to be with you all again, and an even greater pleasure this year as I was able to bring the congregation I serve along with me. So it's great to join you today. The opening words and the first reading that Jan presented earlier were written in 2020. 2020, fairly recent in one sense, and yet it feels like eons ago. Way back near the beginning of this pandemic, just after things were locked down, and I remember reading these articles and receiving this surge of hope. Neither author in the full articles minimized the pain and suffering that this pandemic brought with it. Yet both saw in the way that the pandemic shook the very foundations of all that we had come to expect as normal. They saw possibility. Possibility not in spite of the disruption, but because of it. You can read it in their titles. The coronavirus is rewriting our imaginations, Kim Stanley Robinson. The pandemic is a portal, Arundhati Roy. This time we are living through, painful as it is, provides an opportunity like we have not experienced before for something better. What felt impossible has become thinkable, Kim Stanley Robinson said. We're getting a different sense of our place in history. Arundhati Roy wrote, coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. It offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. We know we're entering a new world, a new era. We seem to be learning our way into a new structure of feeling. I soaked up those messages of hope. I believed in the possibilities of which they spoke. So it is with more than a little sadness that I read them now in 2022, as we near the third year of this pandemic. It is with a little less hope and anticipation. It is with some amount of disappointment. It is with no small amount of apprehension that I ask, what has happened or is happening to these possibilities? Are they still with us? Or are we fated, as Arundhati Roy says, nothing could be worse? Are we fated to return to normality? So I revisit this theme, which I have carried over these many months. I again ask myself, what are some lessons we have learned from this pandemic? Looking to rekindle my own hope that something powerful and lasting will arise from this time, knowing that, as Elizabeth Lesser wrote in the second reading from today, that despair and negativity can spread like a virus too. What have we learned, and how can I carry these lessons forward? We have learned and are learning something important, crucial about interdependence. Now, that's a word we use a lot in Unitarian Universalism. It's right there in our seventh principle, where we, as congregations, covenant to affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. I don't mean to say that we didn't know about interdependence prior to the pandemic. I am saying that we are having an opportunity to experience it in ways we have not had before. We know about interdependence, but I'm not sure we always acknowledge the gravity of that truth. We sometimes treat it as a sort of kumbaya, feel good, we're all part of one family sing-along. And then coronavirus comes along and reminds us that interdependence is dangerous if we do not accept it into our very bones and live accordingly. Because many of us get to live our lives somewhat insulated from many of the painful ramifications of interdependence in normality, we sometimes treat the interdependent web as a club we can choose to join and then go home when we're tired. And then coronavirus comes along and reminds us that there is no exit, that what I do will harm or help others, and what others do will harm or help me, and that there is no exit ramp and there is no consent involved. There are no resignations allowed. Our principle says it beautifully. It does not say we believe in an interdependent web of all existence. It takes the existence of that web as a given. It says, realizing we are a part of that web, we will respect it. Do we? Have we? Or has denial of our interdependence been a part of the normality that Arundhati Roy warns us against returning to? Accepting it intellectually, but not allowing the gravity of its ramifications to enter our lives. Nothing could be worse, says Roy, than our continuing denial, conscious or unconscious, of our interdependence with all of life, with all existence. And coronavirus has maybe helped us to see why we run from the reality of interdependence, because it can be terrifying. Interdependence means I do not have control of it. I must rely on you to do what's best for me, and you must rely on me to do what's best for you. Here's how Martin Luther King Jr. described it. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Caught and tied. These aren't pretty words. They aren't meant to be. But they are intended to remind us that there is no escape. Given that reality, how then shall we live? Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We've heard it 1,000 times. Sounds a little esoteric, doesn't it? Abstract? Now think of a virus. Anywhere can be a threat to everywhere. Interdependence is a reality. We hold the power to respect this interdependence, relying on one another and being reliable, or we can choose to disrespect this interdependence and treat only what's ours as sacred and hold personal freedom above common good, but we cannot decide to opt out of interdependence. Not an option. If we didn't know it, I mean know it, before, we do now. And we need only hearken back to this experience if we ever lose touch with it again. We know it now. Or we did. Can we hold on to that? I am reminded of the words of Dorothy Day speaking of the immediate aftermath of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake as a kind of utopia because of the free-flowing, active compassion displayed by human beings toward one another. While the crisis lasted, she wrote, people loved each other. While the crisis lasted. And then I read those words in a book by Rebecca Solnit entitled A Paradise Built in Hell, The Extraordinary Communities That Arise in Disaster, in which she shows how crises, disasters, tragedies shared by a great number of people, these circumstances often have the power to broaden understanding of what community means. We say, I will be there for you. And the you expands beyond family, beyond friends, to include community, to include people we have never met and may not choose as friends. And yet we suddenly experience our inextricable connection to them. There are no other people's heartaches. There are no other people's injuries. There are no other people's children. There were moments like that. Moments where it felt like we could almost grasp what that may look like. Moments when we saw clearly that the normal world was upside down in the way that Naomi Klein once described, acting as if there is no end to what is actually finite, the real limits to what the earth can take, and as if there are strict and immovable limits to what is actually bountiful, the financial resources to build the kind of society we need. And there were moments when it felt like we were ready to change things, to not only acknowledge, but to honor our connections and to love each other while the crisis lasted. We are still in crisis, but it is an ongoing crisis, and we are in a later season from the one in which Kim Stanley Robinson and Arundhati Roy wrote those hopeful lines, imagining what might arise from it all. We are, as Elizabeth Lesser notes, moving from the great slowdown, which as its name implies, left opportunity for reflection on our own lives and the workings of our society, to what may be called the great meltdown, which has often been marked by angry, frustrated cries for getting things going again, regardless of what ripples that sends out along the interdependent web of all existence. And listen, I understand that people are hurting. I understand that the most vulnerable among us in our local communities, our country, and across the world have suffered the most in this pandemic, just as they did before the pandemic. I know the great slowdown did not provide everyone a period where they could indulge deep reflection on the nature and values of our societies. But what I am saying is that what was true before the pandemic and now during the pandemic may not need to be true for the future. That the most vulnerable among us suffer the most from the irresponsible decisions of people who are insulated from the consequences of those decisions. We could truly embrace the ramifications of our interdependence and realize that we have the financial resources, the human resources, the spiritual and ethical and emotional resources to build the kind of society we need. And that we are not doing it for them. There is no them. There are no other people's heartaches. There are no other people's injuries. There are no other people's children. The seventh principle leads us right back to the sixth that Jan spoke of today, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Now, to me, world community, like the interdependent web of all existence, is a reality. We live in a world community. The goal is peace, liberty, and justice for all within that community. In other words, just as with interdependence, we can either acknowledge that we live in a world community and act respectfully toward it or not. But it doesn't change the reality or our responsibility. In the midst of the pain that has been experienced and the loss that has been suffered throughout this pandemic, we have been granted a vision of a future we may not have thought possible before. We witnessed the gears of the machine grind to a halt long enough for us to imagine a rebuild, a new way of being together. Who can forget way back in 2020, those astounding before and after photos of a wide variety of commonly polluted urban skylines? They filled the news and social media feeds, and people were saying, this is giving us an opportunity to magically see how much better it can be. Who can forget the cheering for healthcare workers and essential workers, the smiles one can still recognize above the masks, the amazing movement for racial justice and police accountability, the ways thousands of communities and individuals reached out to one another, recognizing even in a time of necessary isolation that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to the world community, to our local communities, to our congregations, to one another. There are no other people's children. There are no other people. There will be enormous pressure to forget this spring, Kim Stanley Robinson wrote way back in April of 2020. There will be enormous pressure to forget this spring and go back to the old ways of experiencing life. And yet, forgetting something this big never works, he writes. We'll remember this even if we pretend not to. History is happening now, and it will have happened. So what will we do with that? How about we turn this great meltdown into the great wake up? One that breaks us open and waters the seeds of our best selves. If injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, it may also be the case that acts of love anywhere plant seeds for acts of love everywhere. If danger and sickness can travel along this interdependent web of all existence, so can kindness and generosity and open-heartedness, rippling out along the web in ways we will never be able to trace, but which carry hope nevertheless. What if we resist the pressure to forget, chart a direction that leads away from normality and toward beloved community, cherishing what has been uncovered in this disruption, holding the lessons of the pandemic close to our hearts, so that one day we can look back and say, while the crisis lasted, people loved each other. And then, well, it just seemed to go viral. And when the crisis was over, they just kept loving. So may it be.
Thank you, Rod. The morning offering will now be given and received. Please keep in mind that our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are invited to participate in the blessing of giving. For those at home, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. Thank you. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let us now sing the doxology. From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land, by every tongue. Please join in singing the closing hymn, Break Not the Circle, number 323. Break not the circle of enabling love, where people grow forgiven and forgiving. Break not the circle, make it wider still, till it includes, embraces all the living. Come wonder at this love that comes to life, where words of freedom are with humor spoken, and people keep no score of wrong and guilt, but will that human bonds remain unbroken? Join then the movement of the love that frees, till people of whatever race or nation will truly be themselves, stand on their feet, see eye to eye with laughter and elation. Let us now recite the valediction. The flame of this chalice
will no longer burn today, but the light of the flame within our hearts continues to shine brightly, illuminating the love felt in our community. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. After the benediction, please click on the gallery view button in the upper right corner of your screen, but please remain muted. Randy or I will call on you when you raise your hand. Rod?
Thank you, Gina. May we know, even through this time of necessary isolation, that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to the world community, to our local communities, to our congregations, and to one another. May we be reminded that there are no other people. There is only us, the world community caught and tied with all of life in the interdependent web of all existence. So may it be.